The views, statements, and opinions expressed on the Coming Home podcast do not represent Fairleigh Dickinson University, its views, or affiliates. The content of these episodes are solely focused on the stories, memories, and journeys of FDU alumni. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of FDU Coming Home. I'm Michael Canetti.
And I'm Mike Ramos. Today we have a FDU legend, Eli Amdur. Thank you for coming to this show. Guys, if you don't know Eli, he's a FDU alumni from back in the Eli 60s, is it? The 60s?
I graduated FDU in 1968.
Love it.
Very cool.
And then he was a professor at the university and many other things. So we're going to jump right in. Eli, good to have you. Thanks for coming out today.
I am, as I am with everything at FDU, very happy to be here doing this.
Well, we're happy to have you. So it's funny. We just had Stephen Bozer on the podcast, and he sung your praises to the high heavens, and I was like, we got to get him. We got to get him on the podcast and talk. So you come from with high praise, so I'm excited to chat with you.
And before you go any further, that's very meaningful. Because I have long ago learned that you judge and assess the quality of your life by the quality of the people in it.
Mm. Oh, I appreciate it. I've been lucky enough to spend the last 2.5-3 weeks with you now, and if I'm in this company and part of that subject matter, I actually appreciate those words very much.
Well, if you think about it, there's really no other way. But with Bozer, we could turn this into a testimonial dinner for Stephen Bozer if you want. But he is, let me put it this way, and then we'll move on. I taught in the MBA and then the MAS program at FDU for 15 years, from 2003 to 2018. That plus a couple of programs that I ran in the undergraduate level on a volunteer basis, by the way, brought me to where I had a chance to be of influence and influenced by 1,000+ students from a total of 78 countries around the world.
Wow.
The single most impressive mind that I had in class was Stephen Bozer.
Wow.
So you can call him later and tell him to listen to this.
We will.
Absolutely.
So I guess I want to start off with,
all the way at the beginning.
We could go all the way back, but I'm curious, what inspired you or motivated you to want to teach at the university after so many years of when you graduated?
Well, I'm going to have to interject another statement or thought before that, and that'll give us a good segue to your question. I went to FDU because nobody else would have me.
Same here. No one else wanted me.
Well, in high school, as in other endeavors, I was not a good student, but I was a great learner. I loved learning, but I loved doing it my way. And I had very little use for Mr. L.E. Smith telling me that I had to write history papers, by first formatting them. Come on, that's not what history is.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished high school with a 79 average. And I applied to schools that were never going to take me to begin with. One day, my guidance counselor called my mother and father into the office along with me and said to them, your son, if he had applied himself, should have been going to any college in the university in the United States that he wanted to. But he's not going to, and that's the reality. If you want your son to go to college, and I'm sitting and squirming and sweating in the corner room there. If you want your son to go to college, now this was 1963, he said this. FDU was founded in 1942.
Mm-hmm.
People didn't know about FDU. He said, if you want your son to go to college, I suggest you drive out to Rutherford, New Jersey, and check out Fairleigh Dickinson University. And the three of us were going, huh, who, you know. And he just raised his eyebrows and nodded his head and said, that's my advice. So we went out there, and I met a highly unusual man who was the director of admissions, Howard Hamilton. And he took a look at me and interviewed me and said to my mother and father, get his application in here.
Interesting.
And we did, and he took a look at it, and I got an acceptance letter, which is a good thing because the other 5 schools that I applied to wouldn't write such a document.
But not because you were a male, right? Because wasn't FDU founded on the kind of that?
No, on paper, I was not college material.
Yeah.
I came to FDU in September of '64, and on that day, my life changed.
Really?
Now, first of all, the social life and the athletic life, because I was big into intramurals and stuff like that, were overwhelming. The influence of our founder, Peter Sammartino, was everywhere.
Right.
Peter, he was a very stern man. He was like the fatherly, avuncular image. And his better half, Sally, the two of them put together what we know as FDU as we celebrate it 80 years later. I'll never forget 6 professors.
6?
Wow.
I was going to ask you who influenced you while you were at FDU, and you're going to count off 6 names.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you quickly. Jack Beaton taught freshman English. He was a big guy, about 6'7", probably about 280 pounds, and he looked like Hoss Cartwright. And he was demanding beyond belief. Now, I had always been a good writer, but he took me to levels that I never knew existed. And one of the ways he did it was he lived in a very big house about a block off campus, and every Friday afternoon at 1:00, the front door was open and unlocked, and he was sitting around his dining room table with any student that wanted to come in. And you could talk about anything you wanted as long as it was Milton. There was Jack Beaton. There was Chester Dugdale, who taught freshman biology. There was Charles Angoff, an old European scholar who taught a course called Literary Masterpieces, which ran you through literary masterpieces from Gilgamesh, the Iliad and the Odyssey, selected books from the Bible, and all the way up through the French Romantics. And then there was William Kircher, who was the chairman of the psychology department and ultimately influenced me to select my major of psychology. Dr. Kircher was a kind, sweet man who just happened in his credentials to have studied with Anna Freud. So there was very little that he couldn't stimulate you with. Then there was an angel of a man, Dr. Professor John Dollar. Now, what these professors had in common is they cared so much about growth of the students, and not just academic growth, personal growth, that they would spend more time with you outside the classroom than they did in. And I remember Dr. Dollar, a couple times a week, would take a walk along the pathway between Beckton Hall and the Commons. And there was a bench there under the oak trees. And he would sit down on the bench with a student and begin to talk. And then another student would join, and a third and a fourth. I never had John Dollar for a class, but I spent more time with him than any other professor. The environment of total growth and total involvement, total interaction was extremely unusual. And it offered us the ability to seek growth our way.
Be critical thinkers.
Now, when in 2002, when the MBA program added a class called Executive Communication and Leadership, a young professor in the department, his name is Scott Beeson, and I owe him a great deal, watched me do a seminar for job seekers because I was functioning independently as a career coach. When we were done, we walked out to the parking lot together, and Scott said, "You know what? You ought to consider adjuncting here. You'd be great." It never occurred to me. But all of a sudden, the heavens opened up, and I said, "Wow, what an idea." So I said, "Look, Scott, I would love it. I think I'd be good at it. But, I don't have an advanced degree. I have my bachelor's degree from Fairleigh, and that's it." He said, "Let me fight that fight for you." And he went to Jim Hutton, who was running the program for that course. And one thing led to another, and I got appointed to teach beginning January 2003.
That's so funny. I began teaching at FDU at January 2023.
How about that? So here we see the generations passing the torch to each other. I came home for my first day teaching, January 3rd, 2003, a Saturday. And my wife said, "Well, how was it?" I said, "If I knew teaching was like this, I would have done it a long time ago."
Oh, wow.
Same.
Now, I have 2 or 3 students from that class who are still very much closely in touch with me, or good friends with me, whom I've helped in their careers, and I've been able to mentor. And so there, in a nutshell, is 50 some odd years of my life.
Yeah, it's funny. So I was a student from 2000 to 2004, and my professor was Howard Liebov in the film department. And in like late 22, I saw a posting for a film professor, and I called him, and I stayed in touch with him for 20 years, so we stayed close. And I said, "I'm your man. I want to do this. Let me teach here," and never look back. And I love being there. I love teaching. It's amazing. And
well, you look around for things to validate who you are and what you do. And I had a chance, again, through Scott Beeson, to completely on a volunteer basis. He told me he was the faculty advisor for a club called Business Leaders of Tomorrow, but he wasn't going to be able to continue doing that due to academic pressures. Would I be interested? And that's when my wife said, "Whoa, you're going to do something you're not getting paid for?" I said, "Well, duh, that's what I've been doing all my life." And I took that on. So now I'm working on the undergraduate level too. And if I ever had any questions as to whether or not I was doing the job, in 2007, the Student Government Association, the SGA, voted me the faculty member of the year.
wow.
Now, adjuncts don't get those awards. This adjunct did. So now, in between when I went to school and when I taught at school, I served on the Board of Governors, which you guys know an awful lot about.
Yep.
It was reformed and reorganized in 1984 under President Michael Donaldson. And he had his right-hand administrator, Agnes Armeo, put the thing together. And I accepted the position, served for 10 years. So I was a student here. I was on the Board of Governors here. I was the president of the men's basketball booster club for 11 years. And I also, in 2008, formed an organization called Sands of Time.
I was about to ask about it. I really was. It's on my screen. I was about to ask about it. Go for it. Tell us.
After I had taught in the business school for a few years, I noticed that what I described at FDU when I was there as a student, professors caring, professors taking the trouble to look into their students' souls spend time on that bench between Beckton and the Commons, go to theater and take students with them, suspending obligation for another activity so that they could come watch me play an intramural basketball game. I mean, and they had to be pretty empathetic about that because I was not as good as I thought I was. But that aura, that sense of caring and reaching out to express that care was not evident in the business school when I was teaching there. And it bothered me because it's the single thing that distinguished FDU. I went to Michael Adams, the beloved Michael Adams, and I told him I envisioned a program where we got faculty members and staff members involved with students out of the classroom. A program of cultural, social, intellectual enrichment that nobody got any GPA points for, nobody got any scores. If you wanted to be involved, you were.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I went to Craig Morton, the director of student life at the time. He's now a vice president at the university. And I went to Tina LaPont, the professor of communication, who was very well known to be that kind of person, who won the Faculty Member of the Year award 2 years running after I did. And I got them involved. And at first we had programs where we'd have speakers in, or we'd show movies that matter, films. But things started growing. And before you know it, we were taking a busload of students to the opera, to Lincoln Center, to Carnegie Hall, to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York, Boston. It was an enormous task. At one point, I calculated that I was volunteering 20 hours a week because I didn't get paid for that. And
what's the number of, when you say busload, I mean, how many people were involved at any given time?
At any given event, we had, well, off-campus events, we'd have about 45 people in a bus.
Yeah.
So it was due to Craig Morton's support and belief in the program. It was a costly venture, but Craig tapped into the budget.
Yeah.
And we'd go to see Aida. We'd go to see, we saw over the years, of the 12 years that the program ran, until it had to be cut because of COVID. We saw 34 different orchestras from 15 different countries: Switzerland, France, England, Italy, Cuba, Israel. We saw Cirque du Soleil twice. We went to the New York Botanical Garden 8 times. We went to the the Metropolitan Museum of Art 8 times. The Guggenheim, the Natural History, the Philadelphia Museum. It goes on and on and on and on. But I know that I, along with Craig and other alums who cared to get involved, such as Warren Oates, Alan Igo, Lindsay Green, and other faculty members like Ethne Swartz, Tina, Maureen Vanacore, I know that we had the same kind of influence on our students that Dr. Dollar and Jack Beaton had on me.
That actually goes to my next question, basically. So the impact those professors had on you, you had a pay it forward mentality, which I find so common in these interviews we have, is people want to pay it forward to the next generation. And, I often can identify students that I want to mentor and I work with, and I have students that have graduated and stayed in touch with me long after, and I love that. And when you mentioned you have people that you've talked to forever and stayed in touch with, how do you identify young people that you want to be like, I can help this person grow?
It's impossible to describe how, but it's easy as hell to figure out how and who.
Mm-hmm.
The human being has an innate drive towards growth. That's what we do. And when you think about it, growth is the only evidence of life. Growth is the only evidence of life. And with an innate drive towards growth, as Abraham Maslow said, it comes out. It comes out in the conversations. It comes out in the glances that they throw your way. It comes out in the questions they ask.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, your job is easy. You put the arm around the shoulder and say, come on, let's go through this part of your life together.
Mike, I interrupted you. What was your question? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, do you give everybody that respect? Do we give everybody that time? Right? Is there a reason that not everybody deserves it? Right? And I'm not saying whether they're an FDU student or a human that walks into your life tomorrow morning. At what point do we limit our time or not? What proves them worthy of that?
Well, I don't think it has to do with whether somebody deserves it. I don't think that I'm in a position to judge someone whether they deserve anything or not. But if they reach out in one way or another, and I'm there to grasp that reach out,
yeah,
that's the match you need.
Yeah.
And if I am anything, I'm a teacher.
It's funny
And
you
so
say
I don't lose the opportunity to do so. Well,
Teach.
so I envisioned this program where faculty members who would be willing to do so would be there for the touch.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like John Dollar and William Kirscher and Jack Beaton and Chester Dugdale and Charles Angoff.
Does Sands of Time carry on?
It unfortunately got chopped because of the budget, because of COVID.
Yeah. Okay. Let's hop forward. I want to know about you and your career in between the education, being the educator, but also after, right? You've got coaching, you've got Forbes, you've got other things on your resume that scream FDU helped me influence those things. I'd love to hear more about who you are and what you've done in your career.
Well, I graduated with a degree in psychology, not because I went there 4 years earlier as a freshman saying I want to study psychology. I had no freaking idea what I was going to study. I got to FDU, and the influence of Peter Sammartino was there.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter who you were, no matter what you were majoring in, you were required in your first 2 years to take 18 credits of English and literature and writing. In your freshman year, you took a 2-semester course called Literary Masterpieces, which I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
And in your sophomore year, you took American Masterpieces. You took a mandatory writing course and you took one other course. Peter Sammartino wanted to build a whole human being, and he did. So there I am, a freshman, having a great time playing intramural basketball and hanging out with as many cool guys and cute chicks as possible. That's what a freshman does. And midway through my sophomore year, my academic advisor called me into his office. He said, you haven't picked a major yet. And I remember thinking, and being smart enough not to say this, but I remember thinking, what for? I'm having too good a time here. And he wasn't in the mood for that. He took out a piece of paper. Remember, this is in the days before computers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With an alphabetical list of majors. Put it on the desk facing me and said, okay, let's go. A, accounting. I said, no, never going to happen. B, biology. C, chemistry. And we went through the whole list. He was getting very impatient with me. And we're about 2/3 of the way down the page, and we get to P, philosophy. I said, whoa, no, not me. The next one was psychology. And I said, I'm taking a general psych course, and I'm kind of liking it. He takes a piece of paper, checks off psychology, signs it, and he says, sign here, you're a psychology major. I went on to take 45 credits of psychology, loved it. Never used psychology professionally in my career, but I used it in everything I ever did.
Everything you do, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Mm.
Tell me about those things you did.
Well, when I got out of school, I became a school teacher in the South Bronx in junior high 145, not far from Yankee Stadium. Being a born and raised Brooklyn Dodger fan and then later Mets fan, I tried to ignore the fact that Yankee Stadium was there, but you know how that is, guys.
Yep.
Sure.
Why did I become a school teacher? Because Vietnam was at its ugliest, highest point, and I was very much opposed to Vietnam because in my second year of teaching, one of my students in the 8th grade, 14, I think he was, all of a sudden started acting erratically in class. And I took him aside one day after class and said, what's going on with you? And he told me that his brother had died in Vietnam. I couldn't contain myself. And what came out of it was a wonderful learning moment where we contacted our Congressman, Jonathan Bingham from the South Bronx, and expressed our dissatisfaction with the war and our grief with the war. And he was one of the first 18 congressmen to oppose the war. He said, why don't you guys organize a trip down to Washington? We'll teach these students how to raise their voices. And we did. We went down and back in a day. We took pictures with the congressman. We toured the Capitol. And we became mutually respecting young Americans. The end of my third year teaching was my last year because all of us idealists who were going to change the world starting at junior high 145 in the South Bronx realized that working for the New York City Board of Education, that was never going to happen. The world's worst employer. And we all quit. We all went our own ways. I went down and lived at the Jersey Shore for 3 years and followed the Grateful Dead around diligently from Portland, Maine, all the way through New England, New York, New Jersey, down to Richmond, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. I never went out west with them, and I'm sorry about that. But what I did do was attend, in my estimation, probably about 120 Grateful Dead concerts.
That's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's
I
wild.
want to see pictures of you dressed as a hippie, by the way.
Oh, yeah? Well, that wasn't me. That was my twin brother.
Right. I'm going to check the thumbnails for this episode. It's going to be you and dressed as a hippie.
No cell phones back then.
Well, I can tell you stories about the Fillmore East. I still have my Fillmore East T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I can tell you about seeing a Dead show early on, I think 1969, where there was a leadoff band. This was at the Fillmore that nobody ever heard of before. And we were going, who are these guys? Until they opened the program with Ramblin' Man. It was the Allman Brothers.
Wow. That's awesome.
And we saw Jimi Hendrix New Year's concert and the Byrds and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Janis Joplin, the whole thing. Well, that had to come to an end. And I came back to New York, needed to find a job, and got a job as a delivery boy for a business machine dealer in Mount Vernon, New York, which is where I'm from. I jumped into sales from there, and he didn't have any money or time to train me, but he did give me the room to learn. And I believe that all learning, whether you learn the ropes as a business machine dealer or you learn the ropes as a CEO of a global corporation, all learning is best done not when someone teaches you, but when you take it upon yourself to learn.
Yeah.
And I carried that into the classroom. I wanted to be a guide on the side, not a sage on the stage. And in Albert Einstein's words, I try not to teach my pupils. I try to give them the atmosphere in which they can learn.
Yeah.
So there's a whole connection there over the course of 40 or 50 or whatever it is years. But the use of my psychology degree was invaluable. So I'll be forever indebted to my academic advisor, Mr. Nadoff. There's a common thread running through all of this. And the outlet that I found in order to express that and to continue to pay it forward, as you said before, is FDU.
Yeah. That's why you're here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you're the exact example of what we're talking about with this podcast is this place keeps drawing us back, and the influences we had on us and how we can pass that on to the next generation and so on and so forth. And, listening to you, it's like watching, a seminar, and it's wild. I'm blown away by your story, and it's so interesting. Now,
let me give you something else here.
Yeah.
And this is ingrained. When Peter Sammartino was dreaming of college, which is the name of his book, I Dreamed of College, he wanted to serve two constituencies: veterans and first-generation college students, children of immigrants. He was a child of immigrants. I'm a child of immigrants.
Yeah.
And I'm a first-generation college student.
Yeah.
That is still those two are still our most prominent student constituents. Although the veterans looks very different now with the GI Bill and with FDU's great commitment to vets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have taught so many veterans in my classes over the last 3 or 4 years of teaching. And not only am I teaching them the subject matter, but I'm giving them the bridge that they need from military life to civilian life. Peter Sammartino's dream still lives at FDU. Ain't that something?
It really is something. I'm part of the veterans chapter. Alumni chapter has just a tremendous following of guys that really lean on each other, and I think that's so impressive. There's also the Office of Veteran Affairs at the school, who I've spent time with the folks there.
Yeah, Martha Garcia, right?
Yeah, Martha is a tremendous human being. Yeah, so I hear you, and I think you're right, and I hear those same stats all the time. How many, even today in 2026, we still have first time, the students that are the first in their family or the first in their whomever to make it to college, and FDU paved that way or gave them that road or that opportunity to be a part of it.
I have several in my classes.
Yeah.
Several.
And every, I think our students are proud to be that person, and then become even more proud of the university that provided them the opportunity.
Well, this is a whole environment where we learn that when we meet a veteran, it's not enough to say, thank you for your service.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy to do. How are we going to thank this man or woman for their service?
Hmm.
And it's really cool. And it was when, in my last few years of teaching, when I had a load of veterans, to come home at night, kick my shoes off, and say, you know what? I just helped a vet.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Think about this, and everybody listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Peter Sammartino's dream still lives at FDU. How many first-generation immigrants do we have here?
I just Googled it. It's that book is originally from 1977, published. I Dreamed of College. Very cool. I'm going to read it immediately. I didn't know it existed. But it probably rings true, and it's evergreen, and it's going to live forever. So it's awesome. Ellie, what else you got for me? Tell me something I need to know about the university that I absolutely positively did not know.
Wow, boy, that's a tough one, because there are so many. But what do I want to really get across?
Well, I could ask you that. I mean, what was the university like for you in the 60s and then coming back in the early 2000s to teach, like, and you saw the change from, that 35, 40 years or so in time. What did it feel like when you came back to teach?
And I also don't think it counts that you went to the Rutherford campus as an undergrad. Did you teach also at the Rutherford campus, or
no? I taught at
no,
TNEC.
not until TNEC, right?
Yeah.
Rutherford was gone in '94, so you didn't.
Yeah,
Got it.
The difference from the 60s to the 90s or the 2000s is technology.
Okay.
Now, I don't say that lovingly. Technology very easily overcomes or overshadows those personal relationships that I had with Dollar and Kirscher and Beaton and Dugdale and those enormously beautiful human beings. And it's one thing that Michael Adams liked about the program as I presented it to him. He said he thought it was a retention tool, where that kind of attachment that you can forge between yourself and a professor is there. We showed him in the subsequent couple of years before his untimely and very sad death that it was also a recruiting tool, because we had it up on the website, and I was receiving calls from mothers of high school kids asking to find out about more, a little bit more about Sands of Time.
Mm-hmm.
I think technology is the big difference. We still have small campuses. We have small class sizes, which I think are invaluable. This is how the Greeks educated their youth. Small groups sitting around in a circle with a professor and a mentor. The students would get cheap wine, and the mentor would get good wine. And they would study their own literary works, the Iliad, the Odyssey. They would study the mathematical sciences, geometry and algebra and trigonometry and things like that. They were interested in educating you in three ways, including physical fitness.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way the Greeks did it, and that's the way Peter Sammartino did it. Class sizes, with the exception of a couple select lecture halls, class sizes were 8, 12 students. I'll give you an example. Literary masterpieces, freshman year. FDU assigned 6 full professors with awesome academic credentials to teach that class in a lecture hall format one day a week, and in a small discussion group 2 hours a week. Who would teach which course? Charles Angoff would teach the courses on the Bible. We read about 6 or 7 books of the Bible as literature. Job, Isaiah, select books like Isaiah. The poetry in Isaiah is just beyond belief. And so we would have the small classes taught and supported by the other 5 teachers in the group. So you'd come into the lecture hall in the gym, and you'd sit down, and there's Charles Angoff or any of the others teaching that course. And then the other 2 days a week, there you were discussing it. I have never, ever had a class or a course or a professional workshop as touching as that.
Wow. Speaking of the small class sizes, did you ever have an opportunity to go over to Roxton? Because that's always like a small group that goes over together and form a bond. Did you ever go there either as a student or as a faculty member?
I never did get to Roxton. I wanted to, but my professional schedule didn't permit it. But that was proof of the value system that Peter Sammartino had. I can't say enough about Peter Sammartino. He was not a jovial, popular man, glad handing and backslapping and all of that. But you knew when he looked at you as he was talking to you, he was looking at you, through you, and was trying to figure out another way that he could influence you. The student government groups, which I was a part of, would gather at his mansion on Ridge Road in Rutherford twice a year. And you came out of meetings like that with him saying, "Yep, I just been cared for."
Those are the kinds of quotes I love to put into the podcast. You knew you were cared for is the kind of thing that just, I love that, you get quoted on things like that. And I appreciate when you say you're able to say things like that about the university.
Well, I think of something that Dr. Kirscher said, that my professor of psychology, when I turned in a term paper. It's pretty interesting. He gave it back to me. I got a B+ on the paper. It was not a great paper. But he said to me, "You are a far better writer than you are a researcher. I hope you will write one day."
Okay.
Bingo.
Bingo.
There you go.
Tell me why bingo. Because
ever since 2003, the same year I started teaching, I started writing weekly columns in the Record here in Bergen County, New Jersey. That later got taken over by USA Today, so I was in papers around the country. I wrote in papers out west. And then for 6 years, I just concluded doing it. I was a freelance writer at Forbes.com. Yes, I'm a good writer. And I got that from two places. I always did that well when I was growing up in junior high and high school. But here we come with Jack Beaton again, professor of freshman English, freshman writing, who was incredibly demanding and a fearsome guy, a big guy with a scowl on his face. But he wasn't letting you out of there unless you knew how to write, unless you really knew how to write.
Yeah. I'm feeling we should get closer to a wrap up, and so I'm going to ask you a question because I want to know what you're doing today, and if you have anything on the back burner or the front burner that you really want to kind of push out on the podcast and let things, any projects you're working on.
Well,
that was leading, right? That was totally leading.
Yep.
Look, I'm going to be 79 in June. There's not as many projects that I want to do that I used to, but my 28-year career as a career and executive coach, that's over.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no longer going to be doing that. It's enough is enough. But writing is something that I'm going to be doing. I will probably figure out a way to write my own obituary after the fact.
That's fantastic.
Hey,
out of curiosity, what day in June were you born?
12.
I'm the 7th, so we both started teaching on a 3. We're both born in June. That's kind of funny.
There you go. Keep them going.
Wow.
And we're both talking to each other, so there must be something about this.
Seriously, exactly. I want to call you professor because I feel like I've had a class with you for the last hour. I am just blown away by your story and the amount of names that you could just fire off as far back as in the 60s is incredible, that these people had such impact on you, and it, in a way, encouraged you to make an impact on so many other lives, and I absolutely love that.
Can I take another couple minutes?
Sure, what do you got?
Okay, you talk about these people who had an impact on me. I really want to mention a guy by the name of Stanley Iwanski, who was a faculty advisor to my fraternity. Now, my fraternity was mostly business and accounting majors, but there were a couple of us wayward psych and bio majors. But Stan Iwanski was an accounting professor and never missed a Thursday night meeting of the fraternity. This is a man who loved us each and loved us all, but used to give the non-business majors a whole host of trouble by telling us we're not ready for the real world and we don't know what we're doing and we're probably not ready for salvation either. But he loved us dearly. Now, 16 years after I graduated, I had breakfast one morning with one of my fraternity brothers, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, I'm going to be starting my own business. I started a wholesale business of computer supplies in 1984. Oh, great. What are you going to do? What are you going to call it? Blah, 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 blah. And, he wished me good luck, and we went about our way. Later that evening, the phone rang. Now, nobody had caller ID, so I had no idea who was on the other line. And I pick it up with the innocent hello. Ellie, it's Stan Iwanski. Whoa. I hadn't heard from, nor had he heard from me for probably 6 years. Stan, what's up? He said, never mind what's up. You had breakfast with Jeff this morning, right? I said, yep. And he told me you're starting a business, right? I said, yep. He said, sit down, you need some advice. And Stan gave me 2 pieces of advice that I've given to hundreds of people. He said, so you want to be independent, huh? I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, you better get this straight right now. Independence is a very expensive commodity.
Wow.
You got nobody to pass expense reports off to, nobody to pay your health insurance. It's all on you. And he painted an ominous picture, but I took that and prepared myself for that responsibility. The other advice was, he said, you're going to be your own boss. That's great. You get to work a half a day. And I'm thinking there's something behind this comment. He said, yep, you get to choose whichever 12 hours of the day you want it to be.
Yep. Yeah.
As a career coach and as a professor, I have told hundreds of people that story. Now, I wrote that story in my weekly column in the Record back in maybe 2005, 6, 7, something like that. And I got an email from Stan Iwanski's niece in Clifton, who said, you nailed it. You told the people who read that column who my uncle was.
Wow.
Now, if that doesn't complete the circle, nothing does.
I think it definitely does. I got to say, this was such a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad we got to chat with you, and just spend an hour in your orbit was pretty awesome. And Mike, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough to spend the last 3 or 4 weeks with Ellie, and I had a comment earlier about leading into what else Ellie could possibly be working on, and I'm just going to tease that. Be on the lookout for an opportunity. Ellie may actually deliver a podcast to us with all these amazing quotes, mindsets, memories, and/or intellectual thoughts. So keep an eye out for that. But I think today is Ellie, thank you for doing this with us. Yeah. This was amazing.
I'm going to say you're welcome in one way. I'm going to tell you one more thing.
Sure.
What all those great professors taught me, what Peter Sammartino taught me, what Howard Hamilton taught me, what countless people in my life have taught me, is that the most important thing you can do with your life is something that will outlive you.
This is exactly what I've been saying. Is I have said the whole time, in 100 years, everybody who I know will be gone. But if I can pass on some sort of knowledge or legacy, that will live on long past me. And that's exactly the same mindset that I have. It's so
great way to wrap up. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Mike, finish it. Take us away, Mike.
Sure. Again, folks, thank you for listening. This was incredible. But I want you to remember, no matter where you are, no matter where you go, you can always come home again. This was incredible. Professor Adler, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm blown away. And everybody, we'll see you all next time. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.